We tend to think of AI as like, uh, something that you just tell it what to do and it responds right. Like maybe it helps us write a document here and there.
Yeah.
But there's a really big shift happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing these AI agents pop up everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they're not just like these little helpers anymore. They're like entities operating within businesses.
Right.
And I mean, all over North America, from
Yeah.
Canada all the way down to the US, and they're making decisions and taking action all on their own.
That's right.
And a lot of the time with very little oversight from us humans.
Yeah, it's a real evolution, I think.
Yeah.
We're moving beyond AI as just a tool to something more like a teammate.
Yeah.
And for this deep dive, we are looking at the rise of AI agents, transforming business operations across North America.
Okay.
This report gives a really great look at how AI agents are going from just like a theory to, an everyday thing.
Right.
And our goal today is to pull out the most important insights for you so you can really understand what impact they're having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't just about algorithms anymore.
Right.
We're talking about real changes in how businesses work on a daily basis.
Uh-huh.
And the article quotes Dr. Maya Perkins from the Toronto Institute for Applied Technology.
Okay.
And she said something that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
She said, "We're witnessing the evolution from AI as a tool to AI as a teammate."
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Right. I mean, tools, you have to tell them what to do all the time.
Right.
But teammates,
Right.
they understand what the goal is and they work towards it
Oh,
on
yeah.
their own.
Exactly.
So today, we're not just talking about the future.
Yeah.
We're going to be diving into real examples of how these AI agents are actually being used right now.
Cool.
And I think a good place to start is an area that I think most of us can relate to, and that's customer service.
Yeah, customer service is a huge area where AI agents are making a big difference.
Yeah.
Think about when you need help online. Now imagine that instead of just answering your question, what if it could actually predict and solve problems before you even know about them?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're seeing.
Yeah.
The article talks about North Star Communications.
Okay.
They're a telecom company based in Vancouver,
Yeah.
and they implemented an agent-based support system in late 2023.
Okay.
And the results they've seen are pretty amazing.
Uh-huh.
A 43% reduction in support tickets and a 27% increase in customer satisfaction,
Wow.
all in a pretty short time.
That's really impressive.
So what exactly did they do to get these kinds of results? Like, what was their system like?
Well, what's interesting is that they didn't just create one big AI.
Right.
They created a whole ecosystem of specialized agents,
Oh.
each with its own job to do.
Oh, okay.
So they have one agent that just monitors their network
Sure.
to catch problems early on.
Okay.
They have another agent that looks at their data to predict outages.
Right.
And they even have an agent that writes personalized messages to customers
Oh.
if there's a problem.
That's cool.
And the best part is they have an agent that can automatically fix a lot of common issues.
Wow. So I could be like, using the internet and my speed dips a little.
Yeah.
And before I even think about calling support,
Mm-hmm.
the system could have already found the problem,
Exactly.
fixed it,
Yeah.
and sent me a message to let me know.
It's like magic.
That's pretty awesome.
It is.
I mean, that would totally change how I feel about a company.
Definitely.
And the article said this system works 24/7.
Oh, wow.
So that frees up their human staff to deal with more complicated problems.
That makes sense.
So it's like
Okay.
you get faster, more proactive support,
Uh-huh.
and the company saves money and has happier customers.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Definitely a win-win.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to something a little different.
Okay.
Let's talk about finance.
Okay.
That's an industry that deals with a lot of data.
That's an understatement.
Right. I mean, can you imagine the amount of information a big bank has to process every day?
Yeah. It's mind-boggling.
The article mentions Toronto Dominion Bank.
Okay, TD.
Yeah. And they're using AI agents to help them manage all of that data.
Interesting.
But it's not just about managing the data.
Right.
It's about understanding it,
Mm-hmm.
finding insights.
Exactly.
So TD Bank has these AI agents that can gather data from all over the place,
Okay.
like news feeds, financial databases, even their own internal records.
Yeah.
And then get this, the agents can clean the data,
Wow.
analyze it for trends, and even create visuals so that humans can easily see what's going on.
That's pretty impressive.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of this happens without someone having to tell the AI to do each step.
So they're pretty autonomous.
Yeah, very
Oh,
autonomous.
wow.
And the article mentioned that before they started using these agents, their analysts were spending like 60% of their time just preparing the data.
60%. That's crazy.
60%. That's a lot of time spent doing something that, honestly, a computer should be doing.
I know, right? It's such a waste of their skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now with the AI agents,
Mm-hmm.
they've cut that data prep time down to less than 15%.
Wow.
So now these highly skilled analysts can actually spend their time, analyzing and coming up with insights and recommendations.
Right, so they can actually do their jobs.
Exactly.
That's great.
So they have different agents for each stage of the process.
Okay.
Like some agents just focus on gathering the data,
Okay.
then others clean it.
Uh-huh.
Some look for anomalies.
Yeah.
And some create reports.
And then they even have some that distribute those reports to the right people.
It's a whole system.
It really is like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just about saving time.
Right.
It's about giving TD Bank a real strategic advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, when your analysts have more time to think,
Mm-hmm.
they can spot risks and opportunities that they might have missed
That's
before.
right.
Do you have an example from the report of an insight that they might have missed before, but can now get because they have this system?
Yeah, so because the AI agents can process so much information so fast, analysts can now see connections that humans might have missed.
Okay.
Like, they might be able to spot a link between a global event and a change in the market much sooner than before.
Oh, interesting.
And that would allow them to adjust their risk models or, maybe even find a new investment opportunity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's all about finding those tiny clues that are hidden in all that data.
Okay, so let's shift gears again
Okay.
and talk about something that affects pretty much every business.
What's that?
Scheduling and resource management.
Oh, yeah, that can be a nightmare.
Right. Think about all the meetings, the staff schedules, making sure you have the right resources where they need to be.
Uh-huh.
It can be a real headache.
It definitely can.
So the article talks about MedFirst.
Okay.
They're a big healthcare network in Boston,
Oh.
and they use an agent-based system to manage the schedules of over 3,200 professionals across 27 facilities.
Wow, that's a lot of people to keep track of.
It is.
Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine trying to do that manually?
I can't even imagine.
It would be impossible.
Yeah.
But there's this story in the article about a snowstorm in Boston
Oh, yeah.
that really shows how powerful this system is.
What happened?
Well, when the snowstorm hit, their scheduling agents automatically rescheduled thousands of appointments,
Wow.
notified all the patients, and reallocated resources all in a matter of minutes.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is.
I mean, think about how long that would have taken to do manually.
Oh my gosh, it would have been days or even weeks
Yeah.
of just chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does this system work?
Well, it's actually pretty complicated.
Okay.
They have a whole network of agents all working together.
Mhm.
So they have patient agents that store all the patient information, like their appointment history, their preferences,
Yeah.
any special needs they might have. They have provider agents that keep track of the doctors and nurses,
Okay.
when they're available, what their specialties are,
Okay.
even their preferred working hours.
Wow.
They also have facility agents
Right.
that manage things like the rooms and equipment and make sure everything is scheduled properly.
Wow.
And then on top of all of that, they have coordination agents
Okay.
that are kind of like the conductors of an orchestra,
Right.
make sure everything runs smoothly
Okay.
and that all the different agents are working together efficiently.
Just like a whole team of AI working together to keep things running smoothly.
Exactly. And the best part is it can adapt to changes in real time.
That's really important, especially in healthcare.
Oh, yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, things are constantly changing.
Right.
So you need a system that can keep up.
Yeah.
So we've seen these amazing examples of what AI agents can do.
Uh-huh.
But let's talk about the technology that makes it all possible.
Okay, let's get technical.
The article gives a really good overview. And the foundation of all of this is large language models, or LLMs.
Right, the brains of the operation.
Exactly. They're the ones that allow the agents to understand language,
Mm-hmm.
interpret context, and generate responses that sound natural.
And even do some reasoning.
Yeah, and they've come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those early systems like AutoGPT?
Oh, yeah.
Well, now we have these enterprise-grade LLMs
Mm-hmm.
that are way more reliable.
Definitely, and much safer.
Exactly like GPT-4 Claude 3.
Gemini Advanced.
Yeah, and they're built on these things called transformer architectures,
Uh-huh.
and they've been trained on tons of data,
Mm.
billions of parameters.
It's incredible how much data they can process.
I know, and they get these huge context windows, which means they can keep track of a lot of information.
Yeah, sometimes over 100,000 tokens.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is.
So it's like they have really good memories.
Yeah, like way better than mine.
Right.
Yeah.
So these LLMs are basically the brains,
Yeah.
but it's not just one big AI doing everything.
Right.
The article also talked about multi-agent architectures.
Uh-huh.
So what's the point of having all these different agents instead of just one big one?
Well, it's kind of like building a team of experts
Or
instead of having one person try to do everything.
Right. You have different people who specialize in different things.
Exactly.
And they work together.
Huh?
So in a multi-agent system,
Yeah.
you might have one agent that's really good at gathering data.
Right.
Another one that's good at cleaning it. Another one that's good at analysis.
Yeah.
And so on.
And they communicate with each other to get the job done.
Yeah, it's a much more efficient way to do things.
Definitely. And it's also more robust.
Okay.
Because if one agent fails, the others can pick up the slack.
That's a good point.
There are different ways to organize these agents, too.
Okay.
Like you could have a hierarchy where some agents are like managers and others are workers.
Yeah.
Or you could have them work more collaboratively where they all contribute equally.
Interesting. So it's very flexible. Okay. The article also mentions planning and reasoning systems like tree of thought and chain of thought.
Yeah, those are really cool.
They sound cool.
They are.
So tell me more about those.
Well, tree of thought is like when the agent explores different ways to solve a problem.
Okay.
It's kind of like brainstorming.
Okay.
It considers all the different options and then chooses the best one.
So it's thinking ahead.
It is.
That's cool.
Chain of thought is a little different.
Okay.
That's when the agent breaks down a problem into smaller steps
Okay.
and explains its reasoning along the way.
So it's like showing its work.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you have these react frameworks.
What are those?
Well, they combine reasoning and acting.
Okay.
So the agent can think through a problem,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also take actions in the real world
Oh, wow.
and then learn from the results.
So it's learning by doing.
It is.
That's awesome.
And we can't forget about RAG,
RAG. What's that?
Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Right. That's when the agent can access and use information from external knowledge bases.
Okay.
So it can give you more accurate and relevant answers.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like having a research assistant built in.
That's cool.
It is.
So we have these LLMs that are kind of the brains.
Uh-huh.
We have multi-agent architectures where different agents specialize in different things.
Right.
And we have planning and reasoning systems that allow agents to think strategically.
Exactly.
But how do we make sure that these agents are aligned with our values and expectations?
Well, that's where RLHF comes in.
RLHF.
Reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Okay.
It's basically a way to train AI agents to be helpful, harmless, and, to do what we want them to do.
Okay.
So we use techniques like proximal policy optimization, where the agent learns from rewards and penalties. We also use constitutional AI, where we give the agent a set of rules to follow.
Like a constitution.
Exactly.
That's cool.
And we use preference data sets, which are basically collections of human judgments about what good AI behavior looks like.
Oh, okay. So the AI can learn from our feedback.
Exactly.
And that's really important because as these agents become more autonomous,
Uh-huh.
we need to make sure that they're still working for us
Definitely.
and not the other way around.
Right. We want them to be our partners, not our overlords.
Exactly. Okay, so the article also talked about tool integration frameworks.
Yeah, that's how AI agents connect with all the other software that businesses use.
Right, because they can't just exist in a vacuum.
Right. They need to be able to interact with the real world.
So give me some examples of how that works.
Well, one example is Microsoft's Copilot.
Okay.
That's an AI that integrates with their Office suite.
Right, so it can help you with things like writing documents and creating presentations.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
It is.
So how do they actually connect with all these different systems?
Well, they use things like function calling architectures,
Okay.
API wrappers,
Uh-huh.
semantic routing. Okay.
And output parsers.
what are all of those?
Well, function calling architectures allow the agent to use specific functions within other programs.
Okay.
API wrappers are like translators.
Okay.
They allow the agent to communicate with programs that use different languages.
Okay.
Semantic routing helps direct requests to the right tool.
Okay.
And output parsers help the agent understand the responses it gets from those tools.
So it's like a whole communication system that allows the AI agent to talk to the rest of the digital world.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the big picture stuff,
Uh-huh.
but what about the actual implementation? What are some of the key technical components that we need to think about?
Well, one of the most important things is memory systems.
Okay.
AI agents need a way to remember things.
Okay.
They can't just forget everything they've learned after each interaction.
Right. So they need a memory.
Exactly. And there are different types of memory systems,
Okay.
like vector databases.
What are those?
Well, they store information in a way that captures meaning.
So the agent can retrieve information based on its context, not just keywords.
Oh, that's smart.
Then there are episodic memory buffers.
What do those do?
They keep track of the agent's experiences,
Okay.
kind of like a diary.
Okay.
And then we have knowledge graphs.
What are those?
They represent information as a network of interconnected concepts.
Okay.
It's a way to organize knowledge in a structured way.
So it's all about giving the agent different ways to remember and access information.
Exactly.
Okay. So what about tool use and function calling? We talked about that before.
Right.
But what are some of the technical details involved in making that work securely?
Well, first you need to define the capabilities of the external systems.
Okay.
Using things like OpenAPI or Swagger specifications,
Okay.
those basically tell the agent what the system can do.
Okay.
Then the agent needs to be able to construct function calls,
Okay.
which are basically instructions for the external system.
Okay.
And those calls often use a structured format like JSON. And, of course, security is really important.
Right.
So we need to manage credentials securely,
Yeah.
and we need to be careful about things like rate limiting.
Rate limiting.
Yeah, that's to prevent the agent from overwhelming the external system with too many requests.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then once the agent has executed the function call, it needs to be able to understand the response it gets back.
Right, because it needs to know if it was successful.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the agent set up.
Uh-huh.
It has a memory.
Yeah.
It can use tools.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know that it's behaving itself?
Well, that's where monitoring and observability come in.
Okay.
We need to be able to see what the agent is doing.
Right. And make sure it's not doing anything it shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
So we use tracing systems to track the agent's actions, confidence scoring, to see how sure it is about its decisions.
Yeah.
Anomaly detection to flag any weird behavior. And performance metrics to track things like speed and accuracy.
Yeah.
And of course, we need good logging so we can go back and see what happened if something goes wrong.
Exactly. It's all about having visibility into the agent's behavior.
And speaking of things going wrong,
Uh-oh.
we need to talk about security.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, these agents are powerful.
They are.
They have access to data. They can take actions.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that they're not being used for malicious purposes.
Right.
So what kind of security measures do we need to put in place?
Well, we need to protect against things like prompt injection attacks.
What are those?
Well, that's when someone tries to trick the agent into doing something it shouldn't do
Okay.
by feeding it malicious input.
Oh, that's sneaky.
It is.
So how do we prevent that?
Well, we use input sanitization and validation.
Okay.
Basically, we clean the input to make sure it's safe.
Okay.
We also need to filter the output
Right.
to make sure the agent isn't generating anything harmful or inappropriate. And we need to use things like rate limiting,
Uh-huh.
containerization,
Right.
encryption,
Yeah.
and the principle of least privilege with that.
That means giving the agent only the permissions it needs to do its job.
Okay.
Nothing more.
So it's a multi-layered approach to security.
It is.
We need to protect the agent from the outside world,
Uh-huh.
and we also need to protect the outside world from the agent.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the technical details, but let's bring it back down to earth.
Okay.
The article has this great case study about a small business in Montreal called Critique Furniture.
Yeah. They're a great example of how AI agents can be used by businesses of all sizes.
Okay, so tell me more about them.
Well, they used a no-code platform called Zapier to build their system.
No code. That's interesting.
It is.
So you don't need to be a programmer to use this kind of technology.
Exactly. It's becoming much more accessible.
That's great.
And they enhanced Zapier with the power of LLMs. Okay, so they combined the simplicity of no code with the intelligence of AI.
Exactly.
That's a really smart approach.
It is.
So what did their technical setup look like?
Well, they had a MySQL database for their core data,
Okay.
and they used webhooks to keep everything synchronized in real time.
Okay.
For their vector database, they used PG Vector, which is an extension for PostgreSQL.
Okay.
And their agent system was divided into 3 main parts:
Okay.
inventory management, customer communication, and scheduling optimization.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Okay, so for inventory management,
Yeah.
they used time series forecasting to predict demand.
Okay.
They also automated the generation of purchase orders using API calls to their suppliers.
Okay.
And they used event-driven triggers to respond to changes in stock levels.
Okay.
And to make sure their forecasts were accurate, they used confidence scoring.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
What about customer communication?
Well, they used RGI to provide customers with informative answers to their questions. They used named entity recognition to understand the key elements of those questions.
Okay.
And they fine-tuned a BERT model for message classification.
Okay.
And to manage more complex conversations, they used state machines to create multi-step flows.
Wow, that's pretty advanced.
It is.
What about scheduling?
Well, they used mixed integer linear programming for optimization,
Okay.
constraint satisfaction to ensure that schedules were feasible,
Uh-huh.
dynamic rescheduling based on real-time data like the weather.
That's cool.
And they even used Monte Carlo simulations to assess different scheduling scenarios.
So they were really using the full power of AI.
You were.
How did they manage to integrate all these different components and services?
Well, they relied heavily on Zapier's integration capabilities.
Okay.
They used RESTful APIs for communication,
Okay.
a Youth 2.0 for authentication,
Uh-huh.
webhook listeners to respond to events,
Yeah.
and WebSocket connections for real-time updates.
Wow.
And they also had a really good monitoring system.
Okay.
They used the ELK stack,
What's that?
Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana.
Okay.
It's a popular open source platform for logging and monitoring.
Okay, so they could see what was happening in their system at all times.
Exactly.
So how did they actually roll out this system?
Well, they didn't just flip a switch and turn everything on at once.
Okay.
They took a phased approach.
Okay.
First, they consolidated all of their data.
Okay.
Then they configured and trained the different agents.
Uh-huh.
They did a lot of testing to make sure everything was working properly.
Okay.
And then they gradually increased the agent's level of autonomy.
So it was a very controlled and measured process.
It was.
That's good.
And it paid off.
Okay, so what were the results? Did it actually work?
Oh, yeah. It definitely worked.
Okay.
In the first 6 months, they saw a huge improvement in their order fulfillment time.
Wow.
They also had way fewer customer inquiries that needed human intervention.
Okay.
Their inventory costs went down,
Uh-huh.
and their sales actually went up.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially for a small business.
Right.
So they saved time, money, and actually made more money.
Exactly.
That's the dream.
It is.
Do you know how the AI agents actually help them increase sales?
Yeah. Their customer communication agent,
Right.
one that used RAG,
Uh-huh.
was able to analyze past purchase history
Okay.
and send personalized recommendations to customers.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. And because those recommendations were so relevant,
Uh-huh.
they actually led to more sales.
So it's not just about automating tasks.
Right.
It's about using AI to make smarter decisions.
Exactly.
And that's something that any business can benefit from.
Definitely.
So I think it's clear that AI agents are here to stay.
They're not going anywhere.
They're already having a big impact on businesses, and that impact is only going to grow in the future.
Yeah, we're seeing a real shift in how businesses operate.
Right.
AI is no longer just a tool.
Yeah.
It's a collaborator,
Yeah.
a team.
And that means we need to start thinking differently about how we work with AI.
Definitely.
So here's a question for you to think about.
Okay.
What processes or challenges in your own work or field could be transformed by AI agents?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What could you automate?
Uh-huh.
What insights could you gain?
Right?
How could you work more efficiently and effectively?
Yeah.
It's time to start thinking about how AI can help you achieve your goals.
The future of work is going to be very different,
Yeah.
and AI agents are going to be a big part of that.
So let's embrace the change
Uh-huh.
and see what we can achieve together.
Absolutely. I think the potential for human and artificial intelligence to collaborate is huge,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to see what the future holds.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
I hope you found it insightful.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Yeah.